For a long time, the galaxy had only one name that carried true power: the Empire. Their fleets stretched from one end of the stars to the other. Their banners were feared more than any weapon. Wherever they appeared, silence followed. Civilizations fell before even raising a hand in defense. To the rulers of the Empire, everything was predictable. Every war, every rebellion, every uprising, it all ended the same way. The Empire arrived with ships that blotted out the sky, with weapons that burned through fleets in seconds, and the enemy's spirit shattered before the real fight had even begun. But history has a way of surprising those who grow too comfortable. The first whispers of humans reached the Empire as little more than rumors. Traders spoke of a species from a distant blue world, a place not even marked on many star maps. They said these beings called themselves humans, and that they were spreading faster than expected, building ships far beyond what a young species should be able to. The Empire listened and laughed. To them it was nonsense. Every generation there was always some new rumor of a so-called rising species. It always ended the same way, with their ships burning and their leaders bowing in chains. But the reports did not stop. Patrols began to mention strange encounters, small human craft appearing on the edges of controlled space, moving in ways no one had seen before. Then came the stories of colonies refusing imperial demands, humans standing firm instead of kneeling. The Empire was annoyed, not alarmed. To them, this was not a threat, only an inconvenience, a minor rebellion to be dealt with swiftly. And so, they sent a fleet, not one of their largest, but enough to erase the humans if they resisted. The fleet that approached the border expected a simple task. They had done this hundreds of times. Arrive, demand submission, fire a warning shot if needed, and watch the enemy collapse under fear. But when they reached the edge of human-held space, something felt different. There, waiting for them, was an armada, not scattered ships thrown together, not desperate colonies with old equipment, but an organized fleet holding perfect formation. Human warships stood in silence, their engines burning bright, their weapons ready. They did not broadcast threats, they did not plead for peace. They simply waited. The Imperial commander smirked. To him, this was a show. They line up like soldiers, he said to his crew, but soon they'll break like all the rest. The first step was intimidation. Imperial ships fired warning shots, energy streaks cutting across the void, meant to terrify the humans into standing down. But the humans did not move. Not a single ship broke formation. They glided forward, calm, deliberate, as though they hadn't even noticed the warning. Unease spread through the Imperial ranks. Enemies were supposed to react. They were supposed to panic, to shout, to beg. But here was silence. Here was calm. The order came to attack. Weapons fired, lighting up the darkness. For a moment, it looked like the sky itself was burning. The Empire expected the battle to end right there. Yet in the middle of that firestorm, the humans began to move. Not randomly, not desperately, but with precision. Their fleet shifted as if every pilot shared a single thought. They weaved through the fire, dodging with impossible timing, and then they answered. The counterattack was fast, surgical. Human cannons lit up and Imperial ships began to fall. First one cruiser, then another, then a third. Each strike landed exactly where it hurt most, tearing through armor, cutting through engines, striking with terrifying accuracy. It was not chaos. It was not rage. It was control, the Imperial commander shouted in disbelief. They fight as if they've been here before. They fight as if they know us. But there was no way. The Empire had never faced humans before, and yet watching their ships move, it felt like facing a predator that had studied its prey for centuries. The fight lasted only minutes, but it felt like an eternity. The Empire's formation broke apart under the relentless human push. One by one, ships exploded, fireballs scattering across the void. The survivors panicked, their courage gone. Orders of retreat filled the channels, and then, silence again. The humans did not chase. They did not boast. They held their ground at the border, their formation still tight, their movement still calm, as if to say, "We have made our point." The Imperial fleet limped home, humiliated. Their defeat spread faster than any fire. Rumors became headlines, whispers became shouts. The question repeated across the Empire, who are these humans? Analysts pored over the battle data. They searched for explanations. Perhaps the humans had copied strategies from somewhere. Perhaps they had stolen advanced technology. But the deeper they looked, the more troubling the answer became. It wasn't just their weapons or their ships. It was how they fought. The humans fought like survivors. Every movement, every strike carried the weight of experience that no young species should have had. They did not waste time. They did not hesitate. They did not show fear. The Empire had built its power on fear. Fear was their greatest weapon. Fear broke enemies before the first shot was fired. But what happens when that weapon no longer works? The officers who had faced the humans firsthand could not forget it. They spoke of eyes that never blinked, voices that never wavered, ships that moved like one body with one purpose. They said the humans didn't fight like soldiers but like something older, something more primal. It was the kind of memory that doesn't fade, the kind that spreads. Across the fleets of the Empire, whispers took root. Across the colonies they ruled, sparks of defiance appeared. The humans had not invaded. They had not claimed victory with speeches or banners. They had done something far more dangerous. They had shown the galaxy that the Empire could bleed, and once the galaxy knew that, nothing would ever be the same again. The Empire was used to fighting enemies who gave up easily. Whenever a new world dared to resist, their fleets would appear in orbit, shining like an iron wall of power. The usual pattern was simple. The locals would panic, beg for mercy, and surrender before the first shot was even fired. To the Empire, battles were more about showing dominance than actual war. That's why, when they first heard of humans, they didn't take them seriously. Reports described them as a young species from a single planet, hardly worth the effort of sending more than a small squadron. To the admirals of the Empire, humans were simply another stubborn group that needed to be reminded of their place. A fleet was dispatched. Nothing too big, just a formation strong enough to make a point. They expected the humans to scatter the moment they saw Imperial warships approaching. But when the alien ships arrived near the contested border, something unusual happened. The human armada did not retreat. Instead, their ships glided forward, keeping perfect formation. Not a single vessel broke ranks. Their engines burned steadily, their movement deliberate, calm, almost silent. The alien commanders had seen hundreds of fleets, but never one like this. Normally, when an enemy faced the Empire, their ships jittered nervously, changing positions, trying to look stronger than they really were. But the humans moved as though every pilot and every crew knew exactly what to do. At first, the Empire thought it was an act, some desperate show of courage before defeat. Their commander laughed, calling it a parade before execution. Orders were given to fire warning shots, bright streaks of energy slicing past the humans to scare them. The humans did not flinch. They kept advancing. The aliens grew uneasy. Perhaps they didn't understand, one officer suggested. Another sneered, insisting, "Then we will teach them." The command was given. Attack. Dozens of Imperial cruisers unleashed their weapons, filling space with firepower meant to overwhelm. In past battles, this opening strike was always enough to end the fight immediately. The sight of such force usually broke the enemy's spirit. But as the weapons flew toward the human formation, something extraordinary happened. The humans didn't scatter. They didn't run. Instead, their fleet shifted in precise patterns, dodging fire with movement so well timed that it looked like a single organism rather than individual ships. Then, the humans answered. Their counterattack was not wild or panicked. It was measured, surgical. Each shot was aimed with a purpose, each strike landing exactly where it would cause the most damage. Within moments, one Imperial cruiser was crippled. Another exploded in a silent flash. A third spun out of formation, trailing fire. The Empire's officers froze in disbelief. It wasn't just that the humans were fighting back, it was how they were fighting. They showed no hesitation, no wasted effort, no fear. To the aliens, who had always believed themselves to be the galaxy's finest warriors, this was unsettling. What was even stranger was the silence. Humans didn't flood communication channels with threats or pleas. They didn't waste words. They fought without boasting, without asking for mercy, without fear. The quietness of their battle made the Empire's forces feel as if they weren't facing soldiers but hunters. Minutes passed and the Imperial squadron meant to intimidate was reduced to wreckage. The surviving ships scrambled to retreat, engines burning hot as they fled. The humans didn't chase them. They simply stopped at the border, holding position, watching. For the first time in centuries, an Imperial fleet had been beaten so cleanly, so quickly that no one could explain it. Whispers began spreading across the Empire. These humans, who are they? The reports were studied carefully. Imperial analysts tried to find patterns, some hidden weakness in the human tactics, but what they found was even more troubling. Humans did not fight like the Empire. They didn't rely only on technology or brute force. Their movements carried the weight of instinct, as if survival itself had trained them. Every maneuver, every strike felt like it came from a species that had known struggle for generations. The Empire's leaders dismissed these concerns at first, calling it luck. They claimed the humans had surprised an unprepared squadron and that it would not happen again. Orders were given to prepare a stronger fleet, one that would end the resistance quickly. But deep inside the minds of those who had survived that first clash, fear had already taken root. They had seen the calm precision of the humans. They had seen ships move like extensions of one will. They had felt what it was like to be on the receiving end of a fight where the enemy showed no panic, no hesitation. The whispers grew louder. Humans don't fear us. They fight as though they've always been at war. And that thought terrified the Empire. For centuries, they had relied on fear to control the galaxy. They believed fear was stronger than any weapon. But what could they do against an enemy who did not fear them at all? The humans had only fought with a small part of their armada. Yet the impression they left shook the Empire more than any rebellion in the past. To the galaxy's rulers, it was supposed to be just another skirmish. Instead, it became a warning that the Empire had underestimated a species unlike any they had faced before. The Empire had never known fear. For centuries, their fleets crushed opposition before it even had time to grow. Their soldiers walked across foreign worlds with pride, knowing no one could stand against them. Entire civilizations surrendered, without a single shot because they all believed the same truth. Resistance was hopeless. But after the clash with humans, that truth was shaken. At first, the leaders tried to hide the defeat. They ordered reports sealed, witnesses silenced, and records altered. To the rest of the galaxy, they announced it had only been a minor skirmish, an accident of bad luck, nothing more. But rumors are harder to silence than ships. The stories of the human victory slipped into the lower ranks of the fleet, then into the streets of imperial cities, and then beyond the Empire's borders. Soldiers spoke in hushed voices about ships, moving like shadows, about human fighters who never panicked, and about the terrifying silence that filled the battlefield. And soon, those whispers grew into something larger. In the Imperial barracks, young recruits asked their commanders if the stories were true. In the marketplaces of distant colonies, traders swore they had seen fragments of destroyed Imperial cruisers drifting near human space. In the council chambers of the Empire itself, even the highest officials could not ignore the constant question, who are these humans? What made the whispers more dangerous was that they carried something the Empire feared more than weapons: hope. For centuries, hope had been the one thing crushed out of every world they conquered. Hope was a seed that could grow into rebellion, and rebellion was a flame that could spread. The Empire's rule relied on fear, keeping that seed buried deep. But now, with one unexpected battle, humans had pulled it into the light. The soldiers who returned from that fight described the humans in ways that unsettled even the most loyal officers. They said the humans did not fight with desperation, like rebels. They did not fight with arrogance, like conquerors. They fought with precision, with patience, and with a confidence that came not from power alone, but from something deeper. They fight as if they've done this 1,000 times, one survivor muttered. The word spread quickly. Soon, across the galaxy, the phrase Deathworlders began to echo again. It had always been a half-forgotten legend, a warning in old records of worlds too harsh for life, planets that created species born of struggle and violence. Most believed those stories were myths, exaggerations told to frighten children. But when soldiers looked at humans, when they remembered how those ships moved and how those fleets struck without fear, they wondered if the legends were true after all. The Empire's leaders hated the term, but they could not stop it. Soldiers whispered it in the barracks. Pilots murmured it in the docking bays. Even counselors in private used the word when describing humanity. Deathworlders, a species not shaped by comfort or dominance, but by survival itself. It explained too much. The humans came from a world of storms, of fire, of endless danger. A world where survival was never guaranteed. Every struggle they faced on their home planet had carved something into them, a refusal to break, a determination to endure. And when they carried that determination into the stars, it made them something the Empire had never faced before. The leaders tried to dismiss it as nonsense. They claimed the humans had only won because of chance, or because the fleet sent against them was careless. They promised the galaxy that the next battle would crush them completely, but even as they spoke, their voices lacked the confidence they once had. Because the truth was already too clear. Human ships had been fewer. Their weapons had not outmatched the Empire's. Yet they had won, not by strength alone, but by something else. Something the Empire had never understood. And that was the beginning of real fear. Across the outer colonies, enslaved civilizations listened closely to every whisper. They had always believed that the Empire's rule could never be broken. Now they wondered if humans might be the ones to prove otherwise. Some even dared to speak of rebellion again, believing that the humans were the spark they had been waiting for. For the Empire, this was more dangerous than any battle. A galaxy full of hope was harder to control than a galaxy full of fear, so the Council demanded action. They could not allow whispers to grow into flames. They ordered their admirals to prepare a massive offensive. Not a squadron this time, not a test, but a full show of strength. The humans would be destroyed in front of the entire galaxy. Their victory would be erased by overwhelming firepower. But even as the fleets gathered, the unease did not fade. Admirals who had never doubted themselves before now questioned their own strategies. Soldiers who once felt proud to wear the imperial crest now felt the weight of uncertainty. Pilots who climbed into their cockpits no longer asked, "When will we win?" but instead whispered, "Will we survive?" This was the true power of the humans. Not just the damage they had done in battle, but the fear and doubt they left behind. They had exposed a weakness the Empire had never admitted it had. For all their weapons, for all their fleets, the Empire's strength was built on one fragile thing: belief. And now, that belief was cracking. The humans had shown the galaxy that the Empire was not untouchable. They had shown soldiers that fear could be resisted. They had shown the oppressed that rebellion was possible. And the whispers grew louder with every passing day. Whispers of humans who did not fear. Whispers of humans who fought like predators. Whispers of humans who might one day stand not just against a squadron, not just against a fleet, but against the entire Empire itself. The Council ordered silence. They banned the word deathworlders. They punished soldiers for speaking of humans. They erased records of the battle. But none of it mattered, because the one thing the Empire could never silence was the truth, carried in the hearts of those who had seen the humans with their own eyes. And that truth was spreading faster than the Empire could stop it. The defeat of the First Imperial Squadron spread like wildfire. In every corner of the Empire, whispers turned into questions, and questions turned into worry. How could a small human fleet dismantle ships that had been symbols of power for centuries? The High Council of the Empire could not ignore it any longer. They told the galaxy that it had been a mistake, that the First Squadron was careless, that humans had no real power. But inside the council chambers, behind sealed doors, the truth was admitted. Something was different about this species, something dangerous, so the decision was made. If humans had to be destroyed, then the Empire would use overwhelming strength. They would gather one of their largest fleets and crush humanity in a single strike. There would be no more warnings, no more games. The Empire wanted to prove that it was still the master of the stars. When the news spread that such a fleet was moving toward the human border, other civilizations held their breath. Many had lived for centuries under the shadow of the Empire, fearing its warships, obeying its every demand. They knew what this meant. The humans would be erased just like countless others before them. But once again, the humans refused to follow the script. When the massive Imperial fleet arrived, filling the sky with thousands of ships, everyone expected fear. Everyone expected humans to scatter, to beg, to surrender before destruction fell. But what came instead was silence. The human ships appeared at the edge of the battlefield, calm and steady. They didn't speak, didn't make threats, didn't try to bargain. The Empire had never faced an enemy like this. The opening clash was meant to end everything. Hundreds of Imperial cannons fired in unison, a wave of light and energy roaring across the void. From a distance, it looked like a storm swallowing the stars themselves. Yet the humans met that storm with movements so sharp, so precise, that even the Empire's commanders began to doubt their eyes. The humans didn't just dodge fire, they shaped the battle. Their ships slipped through the chaos as if they had practiced this very war for generations. Every time the Empire pressed forward, the humans shifted, guiding them into traps. Entire wings of Imperial fighters vanished in coordinated ambushes. Cruisers that thought they were safe suddenly found human boarding craft cutting into their hulls. And then came the moment that would be remembered across the galaxy. An Imperial dreadnought, larger than any human vessel, moved in to crush the enemy's center. It had destroyed hundreds of fleets in the past. It had never known defeat. But the humans did not run. They swarmed it like wolves surrounding a beast. Small, agile ships darted around its defenses, striking weak points one after another. For hours the dreadnought fought, but the humans never stopped pressing. When it finally exploded, a shockwave of fire and debris lighting up the battlefield, even the most loyal Imperial soldiers felt their confidence shatter. It wasn't just the destruction that terrified them. It was the way humans fought. The Empire had always believed victory came from intimidation, from making enemies feel hopeless. But humans fought with a different energy. They didn't attack with blind rage or panic. They fought with patience, with strategy, with determination that didn't bend under fear. Their strikes were clean, their decisions unshaken, as if they carried a history of survival deeper than anyone could understand. To the aliens who watched from afar, it was like watching a story rewrite itself. For centuries, the Empire had been the author of every battle, deciding who lived and who died. But now humans were holding the pen. As the battle dragged on, the Empire's great fleet began to crumble. Ship after ship fell, not because they were weak, but because the humans refused to give them the kind of fight they expected. Instead of collapsing under pressure, humans used pressure to trap their enemies. Instead of fearing overwhelming firepower, they used it to lure ships out of position. The strangest part was how little the humans needed to speak. There were no grand speeches broadcast across the stars, no long declarations of war. The humans let their actions speak louder than any words. Every precise strike, every coordinated maneuver was a message. We are not afraid of you. By the time the Empire realized what was happening, it was too late. Their once mighty formation was scattered, their confidence broken. Retreat signals flashed across the fleet, but the humans didn't pursue recklessly. They held their ground, steady, unshaken. That was perhaps the most unsettling part of all. The humans weren't fighting for glory. They weren't fighting for conquest. They fought with a steady calm, as though this battle was not a test of power, but simply another step forward. For the first time in living memory, the Empire had lost not because of weakness, but because their enemy was stronger in spirit. Stronger in will, stronger in a way that no empire could measure with numbers or weapons. The galaxy watched in silence. Worlds that had long bowed to the Empire began to feel something they hadn't felt in generations. Hope. If the humans could stand against such power, maybe the Empire wasn't as untouchable as it seemed. And within the Empire itself, fear spread faster than any rumor. Admirals whispered in private that humans were not like other species. Their strategies made no sense to Imperial logic. Their courage didn't break under fire. They treated war not as a game of intimidation, but as a test of survival. That was when many began to realize the truth. The humans weren't rewriting the rules of war. They were reminding the galaxy of rules that had always existed. Rules born not from domination, but from the simple will to survive no matter the odds. And in that moment, the Empire saw a future it had never imagined. A future where fear no longer protected them. Because the humans had proved something no other species ever dared to show. The Empire could be defeated. The battle was over, but its echo carried across the stars. What had begun as a test of strength for the Empire had turned into something else entirely, a warning. For centuries, the Empire's fleets had ruled without question. Entire civilizations bent their knees at the first sight of Imperial banners. The mere shadow of their dreadnoughts in orbit was enough to silence rebellion. But now that shadow was broken. The humans had stood against it, and they had not just survived, they had shattered it. The news spread quickly. Across the farthest systems, in hidden corners where oppressed peoples whispered their dreams in silence, hope was born again. They asked each other, if humans can face the Empire and live, what else is possible? Inside the Empire, however, it was not hope but fear that spread. Admirals who once boasted of their power now avoided speaking of the battle at all. When they did, their voices trembled. They tried to call it an accident, a rare miscalculation. But the truth was written in the wreckage of their fleet. The soldiers who had faced humans firsthand described something more frightening than weapons or technology. They spoke of silence. They said the humans did not fight like desperate rebels or frightened survivors. They fought like people who had been preparing for this moment long before the Empire even noticed them. This silence unsettled everyone. The Empire was used to enemies who shouted threats, who cried for mercy, who showed fear in the face of destruction. But the humans showed none of that. They fought with a steady calm, as though fear was not even part of their language. And in the council chambers of the Empire, the words no one wanted to say finally came to life. "This cannot be a human armada," one leader whispered, as though saying it aloud would make it true. It must be something else, something far older, something far more dangerous. But no matter what excuses they made, the truth was simple. It was a human armada. The realization hit them harder than the battle itself. If this was what humans could do with a small fleet, what would happen when more of them arrived? How many ships did they truly command? How deep did their strength run? The fear grew heavier with each question because no one had answers. The humans had revealed only a fraction of their power, and already the Empire was trembling. Meanwhile, in the outer worlds, the story of the humans began to spread like a fire impossible to contain. On planets crushed under Imperial rule, people gathered in secret to share tales of the battle. Some claimed to have seen it with their own eyes. Others swore they had family among the survivors. Whether the details were true or twisted, one thing remained the same. The humans had become a symbol. Not a symbol of conquest, not a symbol of domination, but of resistance. For the first time in generations, the people of the galaxy felt that the Empire was not untouchable. They imagined a different future, a future where fear no longer chained them to Imperial commands. And the more they imagined it, the more dangerous it became for the Empire. The leaders of the Empire understood this too well. They knew power was not only built on weapons, but also on belief. As long as the galaxy believed the Empire could not be defeated, they ruled without challenge. But now that belief was cracking. The humans had shown everyone that the impossible was possible. Behind closed doors, the admirals argued endlessly. Some demanded that the humans be destroyed quickly, before their influence spread further. Others insisted that the Empire should wait, study, and understand them first. But underneath all the arguments, one truth remained. The Empire was afraid. Afraid of the silence. Afraid of the calm. Afraid of the humans who fought without fear. And that fear was poison, seeping into the very heart of the Empire that once called itself eternal. Out in the void, the humans did not rush forward. They did not try to claim territory or plant flags of victory. They held their ground with quiet confidence, sending a message stronger than any words. We are here and we are not afraid of you. The Empire tried to dismiss it, but deep down, they could feel it. The age of their unquestioned rule was ending, because it was no longer their shadow that stretched across the stars. It was the shadow of humanity, and that shadow was growing.